Whoops. Back.
No spoilers.
There we go.
Okay.
No spoilers.
All right. So, the reason we have this huge microphone right here is because we're going to be, I think, recording most of these staff meeting training sessions. Am I getting like a... Sounds weird up here. Okay. So that they can be used for makeups and potentially for new staff training in the future. We will see how useful they are for that. So we just finished Module 1. We just had our third study group session this morning for Module 1. So we've got one module down, 19 to go. No problem. That should say 2. Okay, so for Module 2, starting today, this module is about HHS and FDA determinations around human subjects research or clinical investigations involving human subjects.
Oh, jeez. Just hit enter, I think. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Okay.
We'll edit this out.
Okay, that's fine. We're using a fancy new program, so it's going to be very high tech. So, just want to acknowledge for some of you, this is going to be such review that you can maybe say all these definitions forwards and backwards in your sleep, and maybe you make these determinations 5 times every day. Some of you may have made a couple of these determinations. Some of you may have made one or maybe none. So I think part of me wants to say, oh, I'm sorry, we have to go over this stuff that you might already know by heart. But part of me is like, no, I see a lot of value, I think, in us all coming from the same sort of basic understanding, and review doesn't hurt. So with that said, this presentation is going to really focus on the HHS and the FDA only. HIPAA and Washington State don't really have definitions of human subjects. They are more focused on records and information. But based on that comparison table that I handed out in the sessions, you can look at the definitions in there and see that there's definitions of research, there's definitions of human subjects for both HHS and FDA, and sort of compare those. And I also was just sort of thinking about, how does this fit into our current practice in our office? Well, most minimal risk teams, I think, have hanging file folders where we keep determinations that are like, these are not research determinations, these are not human subjects research determinations. We don't have any hanging file folders like that for determinations around HIPAA or determinations around Washington State laws. And we don't really have files where we keep determinations about FDA related definitions either. So moving forward though, just wanted to sort of lay out the context. So for determinations around research and human subjects research, what we've currently got for initial determinations is this whole slew of applications for new items that come into our office, and researchers have to look at all of our different applications and decide what they're going to submit. And so currently we have 7 types of initial applications, and what we're going to be moving towards with Streamline is to actually get that number of initial applications down, hopefully to maybe 1 or 2. Those decisions have not been made yet, so I can't say anything about what our new applications will look like under Zipline. But sort of whatever what we go over this week with Module 2 is going to be applicable no matter what our new applications look like. And so this goes right along with that concept that we've discussed around this sort of philosophy change of putting the regulatory decisions back into the hands of Human Subjects Division staff and IRB members. When I go out and give presentations on campus to researchers, as I know a lot of you do too, but I've been doing it quite a bit this spring. And when I go do presentations on campus, and I go through most of these different types of initial applications, and I talk about, what do you need to submit, what do you not need to submit, and I see that look of confusion on researchers' face and their sort of overwhelmedness at needing to choose between these applications. And so I think, sort of simplifying and streamlining the number of forms we have and putting the regulatory decisions back in our hands, I think is going to really eliminate a lot of this sort of disoriented, bewildered researcher sort of expression that I see. So for this presentation, we've got our HHS determination ladder and FDA, and we're only going to be focusing on the bottom two rungs. Is it research, or is it a clinical investigation, and does that research involve human subjects? And so for these other determinations, these exemptions and engagement questions, those are also determinations. Those are going to be in the next couple of modules. So we're not going to hit those this week. So, for the question, is it research under the HHS regulations? We pretty much just go back to the regulations and back to the definition. I certainly could say this backwards in my sleep, I think, but to review, research is a systematic investigation, including research, development, testing, and evaluation, designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. And each of these blue terms that's highlighted is described in either the regulations or in our office's guidance or worksheets. So there is clarification about each of these different aspects of these definitions. Because as a lot of us know, when you get down to it and you're trying to make a research determination, the definition of each of these terms does become really important. And I think that between the definitions in the regulations and the guidance that we have in our office, especially in the worksheet, human subjects research, that gets us most of the way to figuring out, most scenarios that pop up. I think that this definition of generalizable knowledge is the one that gives us the most problems. And so generalizable, we have in our worksheet, human subjects research, the definition there, the data and or conclusions are intended to apply more broadly beyond the individual study or beyond a specific time and or location, such as to other settings or circumstances. So it's a great definition. It can only go so far. I think one issue that does crop up with research determinations is that the researcher or the investigator or the faculty member or student or whoever's asking the question, before they do an activity, they have to understand the intention of their own activity. And I think sometimes, somebody will call up and say, oh, do I need to submit an IRB application? Is this research? And it's hard to provide assistance to them because they occasionally might not have particularly nailed down the intention of their own activity. So that's one area where some confusion might pop up. But, what we need to sort of be focused on as we make research determinations is getting the information that we need about the nature of the activity and the intention of the activity and whether it is designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. And then once we have that information, then we can make the determination. So the challenge is to figure out how can we get the information we need to make this determination. And I think that concept is really something we're going to talk about in the study group sessions when we start to talk about how would we write screening letters around these kind of determinations. So I created this table, is it research? Examples of activities that commonly raise questions. And I don't know if the font is very readable in the back, but so there's 3 columns here. In the first column, activities that are generally considered to meet the definition of research. So this isn't like absolute, this is general, this is a rule of thumb. Testing activities related to software or product design are generally considered to be research, to fit that definition. Pilot studies, and the establishing of repositories, registries, or subject pools. So these are all Some kind of examples that pop up is sort of causing us to ask questions about business research, and these ones generally I would say are. Activities in the middle column here are ones that may or may not be research, really, depending on the design or the intention of the activity. So quality assurance and quality improvement activities may or may not be research. There's a really great OHARP guidance document called the Quality Improvement Activities FAQ that really clearly addresses some of this. Case studies, program assessments, oral histories, ethnographies are all activities that may or may not be research, depending on the design of the activity. Activities done that will be published or shared in any way may or may not be research. That's something that researchers often really want to hang on to. It's like solid footing. Oh, if I'm going to publish it, it's research. Nope. That one is a middle column one. And then activities that are generally considered not to be research. Medical case reports, biographies, class assignments when they're only done for the purpose of that class and for the purpose of getting a grade, and journalism. And so if there's any examples up here that maybe you're thinking, oh, that's different than my understanding, or really is that the way we think about it, please either raise your hand here, talk to me afterwards. We can talk about it in the study group session, but we kind of want to be looking at these, how do we classify things, how do we think about things, do we all have the same understanding? Anything at this point? Evelyn?
How are subject rules, I know we need
Mm-hmm.
as research, do you go into
Can I go into why? Not really. I don't know. I think that, do they meet the definition of research that we have? I think it's sort of, in a lot of ways, seen as preparatory to research that fits that definition. Does anyone else want to weigh in? Or, yeah. Okay. It is sort of a funny little puzzle piece that maybe doesn't quite fit in as nicely as we'd like it to in some ways. Anything else right now? Okay, so if you've decided something is research, it fits that definition. The next question that we ask ourselves is it research of human subjects? Human subject is a living individual in HHS regs. It's a living individual about whom an investigator conducting research obtains, 1, either data through intervention or interaction with the individual, or 2, identifiable private information. Again, the words highlighted in blue have definitions or additional guidance that's been provided. The definitions of intervention, interaction, private information, and individually identifiable are all in the regulations here directly below this definition of human subject. Okay, so now switching gears to the FDA regulations. I think it's just been fantastic that we've had such great clarification really recently within the past month or two around how do we think about these questions in terms of FDA regulations? Which definitions should we use and why? And so Karen has presented about that a couple times over the last few staff meetings. So this is kind of just going to be going over that again. We've gotten clarification that for the definition of research, we want to use this definition of clinical investigation, which is in 21 CFR 56. It is the broadest definition, and it is the one that we have based all of our sort of guidance and processes going forward around. So clinical investigation is synonymous with research, clinical research, clinical study, and clinical investigation. So when I'm talking FDA and I say, is it research, I'm also saying, is it a clinical investigation? And so this definition is pretty long. And Karen's gone over it, and I highlighted the most sort of important words and phrases in here in blue, and these ones have, again, some guidance around them that you can find in the worksheet for human subjects research in its updated form. What does intended mean? What is the requirements for prior submission? There's clarification about all these aspects. What does involves mean? You have a clarification. Test article is a big part of this definition. Clinical investigation has to be an experiment that involves a test article. So that is the FDA definition of research, and that's what we're looking at when we want to say, is this research that's regulated by the FDA? Also in 21 CFR 56, we have the definition of human subject that we are going to be using. Human subject is an individual who is or becomes a participant in research, either as a recipient of the test article or as a control. The subject might either be a healthy individual or a patient. So this definition of human subject is quite different than the definition of human subject under the HHS regs. They don't harmonize perfectly. Again, test article is referenced in this definition, and so I put the definition of test article down here. Test article is a drug for human use, biologic product for human use, medical device, etc. So when we say, is this human subjects research that's regulated by the FDA, this is the definition that we're looking to. And then one sort of thought experiment I was kind of doing was to think about, well, if we compare research with human subjects in HHS regs and FDA regs, what are some scenarios that, are we able to think of scenarios where something is not considered to be human subjects research for HHS, but it is for FDA? And do you have an idea?
I think so.
Okay, I was going to say we could think about it and talk about it in our study group sessions, but if you have an idea, that's awesome.
Wouldn't the use of anonymized blood samples for development of an IND
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So anonymous, completely anonymized, de-identified samples that are used in development of in vitro diagnostics would not be considered to be human subjects research under HHS because it's not identifiable private information. It's not identifiable, but it is human subject under FDA. There's one other scenario I could think of. Well, actually, Maria thought of it. But so if you want to try and think of it for the study group session, extra credit. Unless anybody, any other ideas now? Okay. Cool. So that pretty much covers it for those determinations, is looking at those definitions and deciding, what is the intention of the activity? Is it research? Is it human subjects? Eliciting the information you need from the researcher or investigator in order to make the determination. So with that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what's coming up. So for this first module, the format was a little bit different than I think what it's going to be for a lot of the upcoming modules because I didn't pass out anything beforehand, and I just handed out some stuff in the session, and the study summary examples were really short. And so what it's going to look like going forward, just as sort of a preview, I'll be sending out these materials by the end of the day today, and I'm hoping that everyone will quickly take a look at them before your study group session. So there's going to be a core education handbook chapter that I'm going to send out. It's going to be these chapters that I'm sort of putting together along with Emily and Maria and Heather and Jason and soon to be Megan with the training committee. They are written at a level that is meant to be for somebody who does not necessarily have a lot of experience with the material. So these chapters are going to be useful for people who are learning to do a type of work that they haven't done before, and they're also going to be used for new staff who come on board. So for the most part, if you're really familiar with these determinations, you're not going to learn anything particularly exciting or new in the chapter. But I still think it's worth taking a look at just to see how it's organized, and I've tried to put in some helpful references and guidance from other sources, like for this chapter 2, for module 2, I selected some of the OHARP guidance around QA/QI activities and around coded data, and sort of pasted it in there. So it's sort of, it's supposed to be a place that you can read, where it's sort of summarizing some major concepts and also pointing you towards other resources. You know, what other things might you want to look at if you're learning about this topic? So if you're really familiar with this material, I still think, I mean, it would be great if you would give it a quick look over. I'd be really interested in hearing feedback about how to improve the chapters so that, you know, you can tighten them up and then they can be used for new staff training. What else? The study summaries that I'm going to send out here going forward, usually there's going to be, I don't know, a couple per week, and they're going to be maybe a page or two, so a little longer than the ones that we did this week. And hopefully, you know, they're going to provide a lot more information than the ones that you saw this week, more details, and more about study design and things. So they are meant to be learning tools. They're not going to be perfect. It's actually really hard to find good examples that demonstrate these concepts at like the right level to sort of hit that sweet spot. A lot of times they're either like too easy and obvious or way too complicated. So, you know, if you are looking at these and you have feedback, like, again, I'd be really happy to hear it. So with these, I would suggest reading through, and then, like, in advance, ahead of your study group session, read the example and jot down a few notes about either what information is missing that you would like to get in order to be able to make a determination or to do review. You know, what kinds of questions would you want to ask an investigator? And then, aside from that, you know, if you had all that information, what kind of determination would you make, or what kind of review considerations would be at play? So hopefully they will be a useful learning tool. And then again, these can be used with new staff as they come on board too. So I think that'll be good. Next week, Karen is going to be presenting Module 3 on risk assessment. I'm very excited for it. I think this will be unlike anything we've really had in the office before. And I think it'll be really great because, sort of as I understand it, what we've sort of, as we've gotten to this point in our office where we are thinking more about regulatory determinations, like is it research, is it human subject, is it exempt, is it engaged, are we engaged, is it minimal risk, and sort of, you know, as our data has been showing, we're bumping down, we're bumping things to minimal risk a lot more. And so as people in the office start to see sort of new parts of the risk spectrum, you know, there's might be one continuous risk spectrum, and minimal risk only sees this slice, and full board only sees this slice. And as we start to see more of the full spectrum in our work, I think there's been some interesting stuff going on. I think when you know, a study gets bumped down to bumped to expedited or minimal risk team from full board, you know, sometimes the expedited team is like, what? We can't review this. This is way too risky. And so there's sort of that disconnect there between how each group sees the level of risk. And then similarly, like if something comes in that could actually be expedited, it could be reviewed by the minimal risk team, and then a full board person sees it and is like, what? This can be expedited? I had no idea. I thought that this was more risky. I think it's going to be really, it's going to give us a lot of insight to sort of try to merge that risk spectrum into one continuous one instead of seeing parts of it. So, are there any questions about the coming weeks or the coming material or anything at this point? Okay, thank you. Please feel free to come bother me anytime.
Thank you.